That was many moons ago. We both went to Inglewood Elementary School. Talking about back in what, 19.
It was third grade.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
I don't know when it was. I don't know what year.
God,
it was third grade.
I can't recall the year. But we were both in the same third grade class. And what teacher was that? It was Miss Taylor. Miss Taylor. And back then, we didn't like each other. You know.
It's not that I didn't like you. I thought he was a goody two shoes because his mom worked there, and he was always the patrol person, and I always thought he got what do you call it? Like, it was always.
She thought I got favoritism.
Yes,
it was
favoritism because his mom worked there.
My mom worked at the school.
But he was a really good student.
And with her, it was just her voice. She had a very distinct high voice that I just
annoying.
That I couldn't. Yeah.
And he wrote "Crazy" by my name.
I did.
In the
yearbook.
Yearbook. You wrote "Crazy" by my name. So
because back then you would on the yearbook you would put if that person was your friend, if they were crazy, if they were whatever, and she was definitely one that I put crazy by.
I was hyper.
Yeah. That's what it was.
That's how it started. Elementary school.
I mean, you all are gonna laugh at this. She almost ran me over with her car. So the back end of that story is when I recently transitioned from overseas, and it was my first Sunday coming back to church, and me and one of my battle buddies, shout out to my boy Dominic Roundtree and Makita Roundtree out in San Diego. We were coming to church. We had just got back to Jacksonville, and we were walking into the church, and I guess I was looking good that Sunday, and she wasn't paying attention to what she was doing. She almost hit me with the front end of her bumper. But then that's how...
I don't remember that happening that way, but I did when I saw him. I can really say I was struck. Like love at first sight.
And that's how we first initially met. Her almost running me over with her car.
And then my mom introduced us, and I asked him to come to my school to talk to my students about him being in the military and just showing them different things about the military. So we talked that entire night.
So I got up one morning and I decided to take a drive, and that was to St. Augustine Outlets. And walking in the Outlets Mall, I hear this gentleman says, "Hey, woman of God." And so I turned around and looked. And what did you say?
I said, "My name is Reverend Lorenzo Patterson." And she turned and looked at me and said, "So?"
Well, and then I looked at him and I said, "Well, how do you know me?" And little did I know he was a Facebook friend of mine. Because I have a lot of Facebook friends. I don't pay attention to that. And he had been following me on Facebook. I think that particular year we were getting ready to have Pastor Appreciation or conference or something. And so he was like, and I looked at him, I said, "Okay." And it went from there. I was trying to be a little hard, but I kind of liked him. He didn't approach me the wrong way.
Well, let's start with high school. It was the last year of high school. We were both seniors, and we had no idea we had even attended the same school for 4 years. But I was walking down the hallway one of the last days of school, and I saw him out in the hallway. And I was like, "Did you go to Inglewood Elementary?" And I said, "Did you have a sister and a mom that worked there?" He was like, "Yeah." So we was just like, that's how we met back up in the hallway in the last year of high school. And it was a yearbook signing day, and I saw him again, and I put my phone number in his yearbook.
In the book.
But you went on a senior trip, and I called you.
Well, it was maybe a week or two before. Actually, no, it was like 2 weeks before school had ended. It was crazy. We went through 4 years of school, and I didn't even know she was at the same school. It was that distinct moment at the end of the senior year that I noticed her, and she came down. I remember the hallway. I think it was like the math hallway or something. I can't remember what. But she came down the hallway, and I was like, "Oh my God, the girl looks
familiar."
That's Sarita Carr.
Yep.
Oh my God, that's Sarita Carr. And it was like, dang, Sarita Carr.
You went here?
She looked pretty good. She cleaned up really well.
Cleaned up.
And it was
The senior trip.
it was right before the senior trip. We actually had a yearbook signing.
Yeah.
Because we got our yearbooks before the senior sign, the senior trip. And got my yearbook. She wrote in it, put her number in it, and I gave her mine. And it was crazy. We went on the senior trip.
I didn't go.
No, the senior trip. It was the what's that big trip with all the high school students get together? Grad Bash.
Oh, Grad Bash.
It was Grad Bash.
Okay.
It's all come back to my memories. At Disney's Magic Kingdom. And I remember the ride. I was waiting in the line to get on the Space Mountain.
Space Mountain.
And I received a call. I'm like, who is this call?
I was so nervous to call.
And it was so amazing. I was like, oh my God, hey. We talked for maybe 5 minutes because I was in the line waiting to get on the ride. And I said, well, I'm going to call you back. And I called it back, I think it was like the next day or something like that.
Yeah.
And
we used to stay on the phone till both of us fell asleep. Like we used to just be sleeping on the phone.
On the phone.
We talked so much, and we dated for 2 years.
The phone used to be hot the next day.
Yeah, for real.
Hot, burning hot.
I also had a boyfriend at the time, but I had to let him know that I just didn't want to date him anymore because I knew I had met my husband.
So would you say it was love at first sight for you as well, Morris? Or
I can't necessarily say love at first sight, just to be real, but
He was talking to somebody else and was trying to be a player.
Nah, I wasn't trying to be a player, but the thing of it is that, she knew, but I knew she was the type of girl, lady that I was looking for. She had all of the qualities that I was looking for in a lady. So, I think as we started to continue to talk, that love started to grow, and then, 15 years later, here we are.
Before I initially seen her inside the St. Augustine Mall outlet, I used to go on Facebook and I used to sing the song. I love Lionel Richie, and the song was "Hello." And I said, and I used to sing this song, "Hello, is it me you're looking for?" And I used to say, I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your smile. And I love her smile. And I never told this until we got married about how I used to sing to her and she didn't even know me. So I kind of felt like I was a stalker at one time. But God revealed to me that I wasn't, that he was preparing her and preparing me to meet my bride. And I'll tell you, when the hunt came on, as men, we are hunters. And every day I still hunt this woman.
Okay, so who do you think was like the most saved when y'all was first together?
Oh, it was definitely her.
I took him to my church. I was Seventh-day Adventist. So we went to church on Saturday, and my whole life was always about church. Church. Like, I mean, it wasn't bad to the point I was always at church. Like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We didn't really have like Bible studies and stuff like that, but every Saturday, it was all about church. So it was definitely me.
It was her. Like I said, I'm
wasn't out
not gonna say I wasn't in church.
Because you grew up in church.
My mama
too.
had me at Bible study, Friday Night Live, church morning, church Sunday morning, church Sunday evening. When the pastor had to go preach somewhere, we were there. So I was always in church.
Yeah, I was probably what you would call a heathen amongst heathens at that time. I mean, so Army life is a hard life, but it was a good lifestyle at that time. But I mean, my mind was so far gone in what I was doing, I wasn't thinking about the Lord at the time, but certain situations end up pushing me back into where I am now. So God will allow the proper situations in your life to align to get you on track.
One of the things that we did when we was courting is we had a balance in our dating. It was on Friday nights, we had services at We're for Jesus, and she would come over because she didn't have services at her church. And we would spend our time worshiping together. And we got to know each other, not just in the physical form, but spiritually. We get to know each other's spirit, and we got to be able to worship God together. And I think it was so important that we start off that way in relationships, that we know each other's spirit, and that we begin to pray and worship God together. And I think that was our concrete of our strength in our relationship.
Because Yah would go, and he used to go to different drug rehabs. I think it was a particular, I'm not gonna call the name, there was a particular center he asked me to go to on a Tuesday night. And I went there, and I really liked what I saw, how he ministered to, you know, those that were in rehab. You know, and I liked that. You know, I fell in love with his spirit.
You mentioned that you were Seventh-day Adventist when you guys first got together. So how did you guys blend in the different denominations?
That's good.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm gonna start by saying, you know, a woman follows the husband, but I didn't feel like it was a big difference in the way we worshiped.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it was like, what in the world? You know, what kind of stuff, you know, are they into over there? I didn't feel like that. It was like a smooth, like, transition, like, they like us. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't feel like it was wrong. You know what I'm saying? Even though in my heart, I'm Seventh-day Adventist, you know, that's how I was raised, SDA. But it wasn't hard. And I actually helped. It was some of my SDA friends that I grew up with that married,
That's right.
you know, men that went to church on Sunday, and they came to me like, how did you do it? And I'm like, it's not that hard. Don't let people put it in your head that it's, they're going to hell. I've always known.
Yeah.
God is not going to say everybody that go to church on Sunday is going to hell.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I'm like, no, that's not right. So I was the one that girls used to come to and ask that question. Like, it's not hard. You can't let people get in your head. It was smooth.
Yeah.
It was they love me at that church. They respect, you know, my views or whatever. They never came to me and shunned me. And when I used to bring him to my church, they never shunned him. Now, it was a few people that would have their questions and say their little statements.
Yeah, we came up against a lot of little stuff.
Yeah.
So what happened was I was getting my vehicle ready. It was a car 95 Impala SS, and I was getting it customized, putting rims on it, TVs, a nice sound system in it, and it wasn't quite right yet. And I kept putting her out to go out on a date. And she really thought I wasn't interested in her. And I told her, I said, no, I just want to have myself together when we go out. So what ended up happening, I didn't want her to think that I was blowing her out. So I went over there to her house, and my car still wasn't together. So we get ready to leave to go, and my car wouldn't crank.
I was like, goodness, do we want to go out?
I mean, it wouldn't crank. But she said, hey, don't worry about it. Drive my car. And right then and there, it showed me, hey, she's not caught up in all of those materialistic things. She just wanted to be with me. So I think that was the solidifying factor right there.
Okay.
Stop laughing.
He got to meet my family. I think it was Thanksgiving Day. He did Thanksgiving morning with his family. And he was in a hurry to meet my family. And I lived in Palm Coast at that time. And we were all sitting around, and my granddaughter that I used to have a lot, Kaylin, it was so funny because he loves his hat. He had on a brim, they call him a brim, he had on a black brim. And he was sitting next to me on the sofa, and she just walked up and took his hat off, you know, his head and put on her head. And I knew right then that was a sign, you know, and my family fell in love with him. They liked him, and all of the family wasn't there. And then I met I think it was before Thanksgiving, I met his bishop. And when he told me, he said, I want you to meet my bishop. I knew that was so important because it made me feel like he had nothing to hide.
I knew that she was a praying woman. She prayed. I mean, she would quote scriptures and everything. Like, I knew she was the one because she was saved and she knew Christ, and she knew when times were down, she would always go back to the word and say, Zay, hey, and still to this day, she does that same thing. I'm human. You know, there are times when I get a little upset, you know, or little things like that, but she always finds a way to pull me back and say, okay, Zay, you got to get back to your word. You got to pray. You got to fast. And that's what really drew me to her.
The call, and to be real, the call for ministry, that was probably a hard transitional period. Both of us were in ministry together. I was a minister at that time, and she was still singing and evangelist. But when I got called into pastoring, it was kind of a frantic time. I mean, my dad, Pastor Rudolph Mims, God bless the dead, he had just transitioned on, and the ministry was kind of in a state of chaos at that time. And when the Lord put on my heart, I didn't do things right, and I can be honest, I can say it should have been one of those things. As I transitioned to that position, I brought her with me hand in hand, but as me jumping into that role, it kind of left her to the side, and we should have transitioned together. So that whole process and time frame right there was hard for the both of us, and it kind of put a strain on the relationship, to be honest. I mean, because when you're transitioning into a role and you're not prepared for it, and your spouse is not prepared for it, you have young kids, it can put a toll on your relationship. But you know, in time, as we started to find balance, things started to get better. But I ultimately learned that where God has for me, both of our futures are entailed together. So I can't transition without her transitioning with me. So that was an eye-opener right there. But I had to die to self, and God allowed that ego to decrease. And then now, as we're walking together, things are how they're supposed to be. But it was a hard transition, just to be real. And those of you that are out there, do things together, transition together, because God will never elevate one without taking that spouse. Because ministry for the spouse is hard, because she's going to catch the blunt of everything else. And as I was catapulted to the forefront, it was leaving her and my kids in the shadows. And that's not how God orchestrated that thing to be, just to be honest.
I love it. You know, we love it. God had to really work on me. I love it because it's good, because we have men in the ministry. And I pastored 9 years again. I was like, you know, when I pastored before I met my previous husband that passed, I pastored for almost 20 some years, you know, well, maybe 15 years being a single. And I'm like, God, here I am again. I've been pastoring for 34 years. And I'm like, here I am again, God. But it's awesome, because I've learned how to balance it. You know, we can minister to men, but I notice, you know, there's certain things. I mean, I can say things to men, but there's certain things that he can say in a private setting to men that I can't say. You know, because you know, you have to draw the line. You have to kind of like draw the line. So at first it was kind of like, okay, so, you know, I got to share this with him. I'm being honest, you know. But God did it. I asked God to help me understand it. And it wasn't as hard because I have other pastors in here, so I had been sharing ministry with them. You know, when I say sharing it, as far as, you know, the platform, you know, giving them space to minister and preach. But it's good. I like it.
When I got called to move into the direction, it wasn't an overnight thing. I started out in the sound room. That's a ministry. That's a ministry in itself. God had moved on my life to dance. Yeah. I mimed for a long time. And then a bishop preached and he pointed at me. He said, man, your movements are getting ready to turn into words. And I said, I said, oh my God, what are you talking about? I didn't know that a month or two later, God was going to elevate me to become, not a month, a year or two later, God was going to elevate me to be a youth pastor. And when I became a youth pastor, it wasn't a overnight thing either. I didn't pick the mic up 2-3 years later. You know, I worked in the call of a youth pastor. You don't have to have a mic to no.
Minister, yeah.
I ministered to those kids, and I still had an impact on those kids, even though I wasn't ministering in the pulpit.
Yeah.
And so during that time, to answer the question, I did. I came to my wife, talked to her. She already knew the calls that was on my life. And in fact, if she didn't know the call was on my life, then she wouldn't have been the woman that she was to help pull me and push me where I need to be.
Get to know each other. And like we did spiritually. You know, I talked to him on the phone for a month. And I went to his church. I wanted to know who this man really was. You know, because people can hide stuff. And even at that point, you know, they can still hide stuff. I would say take your time, court to marry. Don't just court to court. Don't date, well, the new word is date. Date to marry. You know, make sure before you go out there putting it on blast, make sure that this is the one.
Yes.
Sit down and talk to your family. It was important how you know, how my family felt about him. People can pick up on things. People can discern things, you know. Make sure that these, you know, the people are, you know, they have the right spirit about it, you know.
Keep God in the middle of it. It doesn't sound simple, but it's very simple. I think a lot of couples, they take it too seriously. It's not that hard. Just give God his time.
That's it.
Give God his time.
That's it.
Give him a day. Give him a few hours a day. It's not that hard.
You really have to have a prayer life, and you have to ask God, you know, is this the person for me? You know, I think a lot of times women try to change the man to mold him to be what they want versus praying a prayer. And I always prayed this prayer even for Morris. Lord, bless him to be the man of God that you created him to be. And that's a prayer that I know God heard my cry for. And so I think for, you know, women just getting into relationships, sometimes we want them to fit the mold of our dad or a former boyfriend or your best friend's boyfriend or whatever, looking into other people's relationships versus just saying, you know, Lord, help me to be the woman you call me to be, help him to be the man that you call him to be. Because we, like, once again, we cannot change people. You know, we can try to change people and it may work for a little while, but ultimately that person is going to come out of that cocoon and be the person who they want to be. So when you pray for God's will, you know, no, he may not have it all together. He may not pray 5 times a day like how you do, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a relationship with God. So you have to really, you know, because I wasn't perfect in every area. You know, so we really have to just pray and seek and ask God